as you know, and as you might not know, but you might know, this is the second to the last of this series for this year. So next study will be next month, towards the end of next month, and we are beginning the study on the sixth book in the History of Redemption series, which is about Jesus Christ, the High Priest in the order of Melchizedek. And so we are going to embark on this book, but unlike our hope and expectation, we were hoping, I think I mentioned in the beginning of this year, I was hoping that by the time we get to book 6, the book will actually be published. But it's still in the process with the publisher. So the books are not out yet, but once the books are out, they will be available for you to purchase. Amazon.com, Kinokuniya, and different bookstores. But it is in the process. I don't know how much longer it will take, but it is in the process. But this is kind of like a sneak preview before the book launching. So, and you are actually the one of the first people that will be hearing this study in Singapore. And so here we go. Before we begin the actual study, today I want to do something a little bit different from other times, and I hope you like it. We're going to read from the Bible. We're going to read the Bible. Something different, right? We are going to read the Bible, just a couple of chapters before we begin, so that we can have a background understanding of what the Bible is telling us in regards to Jesus being our high priest. Okay? So this one is Hebrews chapter 3. Hebrews chapter 3, so we're going to read the entire book of Hebrews. For your information, this is one of the posters from, this is a diagram and chart that is included in the book. And this is about the different garments the high priest is wearing. And this is the stones in the right order of the breastplate. Okay? And so on. This is what the book looks like in Korean. The eternal high priest of the covenantal oath. And this is one of the main passages that the author uses to introduce the book. So we're going to get to Hebrews chapter 4 verses 14 and 15 later, but we're going to read the entire chapter. Is that okay? Yes. You like reading the Bible, right? Okay, so here we go. Therefore, holy brethren, partakers of a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession. Why don't we do this? We'll read alternatively. I'll read one verse. You can together read the next verse alternatively. Okay? I'll read verse 1 again. Therefore, holy brethren, partakers of a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession. He was faithful to you as Moses also was in all his house. For he has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, by just so much as the builder of the house has more honor than the house. But every house is built by someone, the builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant, for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken later. But Christ was faithful as a son over his house, whose house was God, giving all us of confidence and boast of our hope unto the end. Therefore, just as the Holy Spirit says, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as when they proved. Ready? Begin. Do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me, as in the day of trial in the wilderness. Where your fathers tried me by testing me and saw my works for 40 years. Therefore I was angry with this generation and said, they always go astray in their hearts, and they do not know my ways. As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Declare, brethren, that there not be encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin.
For we have become partakers of Christ, if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance up unto the end.
While it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me.
For whom provoked me when they had heard, we knew not all those who came from Egypt by Moses.
And with whom was he angry for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, those whose bodies fell in the wilderness?
And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient?
So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. And then we're going to skip to chapter 4, verses 14 and 15, as I mentioned. Let us read this together. Ready? Begin. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Let us read verse 16 also. Therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Amen. And then we're going to read chapter 15 also. Are you okay still with me? Okay. Only 2 chapters is not much, right? Okay, chapter 5. Chapter 5. And the title that this Bible gave is The Perfect High Priest. For every high priest taken from among men is appointed on behalf of men in things pertaining to God, in order to offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins.
He can deal gently with ignorance and desires, since he himself also is exactly weakness.
And because of it, he is obligated to offer sacrifices for sins, as for the people, so also for himself.
And no one takes the honor to himself, but receives it when he is called by God, even as Aaron was.
So also Christ did not glorify himself so as to become a high priest, but he who said to him, "You are my son, today I have begotten you."
Just as he said also in the passage, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek."
In the days of his flesh, he offered up both prayers and supplications with loud crying and tears to the one able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his piety.
Although he was a son, he learned obedience from the things which he suffered.
And having been made perfect, he became to all those who obey him the source of eternal salvation,
being designated by God as a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek.
Concerning him we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing.
Although by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you elementary principles of the oracles of God, and you have come to need milk and not solid food.
For everyone who partakes only of milk is not accustomed to the word of righteousness, for he is an infant.
But solid food is for the mature,
who because of practice have their senses trained to discern good and evil. This is the word of God. Amen. It feels good to have read the Bible. and the content is just amazing, because the book of Hebrews is, to my understanding, is a summary of the entire history of redemption. And as we are studying the history of redemption, we've been studying the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Okay? We began from Adam, we went to Enoch, Noah, and then from Noah to Abraham, from Abraham to Jesus. We have studied, and while we are making our way through the genealogy and the generations, we have found different mysteries that are revealed through the Bible. And so that's one genealogy in the Bible. And Hebrews summarizes that genealogy from all the way from Adam all the way to Jesus in Hebrews chapter 11, the book of faith. And he goes through by saying, by faith, Abel offered an offering. By faith, Noah. By faith, Abraham. By faith, by faith, by faith. And the focal person in that chapter is Abraham, the father of faith, because it's a chapter of faith. It's basically a genealogy of faith. And then Matthew's genealogy speaks of the lineage from Abraham all the way to Jesus and focuses and emphasizes the importance of David. So the genealogy goes from Adam, and Abraham takes over, and the seed of Abraham becomes the seed of David, and the seed of David becomes Jesus, just as promised. That we understand. But then there's another set of genealogies in the Bible that we oftentimes ignore. Do you know which book has the longest genealogies? That's the book that the sixth book focuses on. Chronicles is written by the prophet Ezra, and it is placed in the end of the Old Testament in the Hebrew original text. Our Bible has, which book is the last book in the Old Testament? Malachi, right? But then in the Hebrew Bible, Hebrew text, the Chronicles is the last book. Basically using the genealogy to sum up the entire Old Testament, in which God, from the time of the fall, or actually from the time of the creation to the fall, and all the way in this process of restoration, in preparing for the Messiah, the promised seed to come. That entire process is summarized in this genealogies. And there are two main genealogies in the Chronicles. One is the genealogy, one emphasized is the genealogy of David. Starting from Adam, leading all the way to David. That's the genealogy in the line of the tribe of Judah. Right? But there is another a chunk of genealogy that is emphasized, and that is the genealogy of the high priests. Genealogy of the priests. And which tribe is that genealogy from? Tribe of Levi, right? Tribe of Levi. And so, and Jesus has nothing to do, we cannot say zero, nothing, but Jesus came in the line of Judah, not the line of Levi, right? Jesus is not a descendant of Aaron. Jesus is a descendant of, according to the genealogy, right? Descendant of Judah and David. But here, it says, Jesus, our high priest. And high priest is supposed to be according to the order of Aaron in the line of Levi. But let's skip to Hebrews chapter 7. And it speaks about Melchizedek, and then later it says, in verse 3 and verse 3, it says, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like the Son of God. So makes us wonder who this Melchizedek is, because in Hebrews chapter 5, it said concerning him, but concerning Melchizedek, there's so much to say, but you have become dull of hearing. So he is speaking as though he is concealing a lot of the information about Melchizedek. And the little information that is given in chapter 7 is this: Melchizedek, this Melchizedek, king of Salem. And liberal theologians say that he was just a Gentile priest and king from another town. But here it says king of Shalem. Shalem comes from Shalom, and that's the antique name, the previous name for Yerushalayim, okay, which is Jerusalem. Jerusalem, right? And so, priest of the Most High God, and that title is not given to any other God than our God. Okay? This is a title given to Abraham in description of the only God, who met Abraham as he was returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham apportioned a 10th part of all the spoils, was first of all, by the translation of his name, King of Righteousness. Melch, okay, or Malach, okay, or Melech is in Hebrew, king, okay. And so, when you say Melchi, it means mine, personal, possessive pronoun, mine, okay. So, Melchi is my king. Tzedek is righteousness. So, by the translation of the name, it means king of righteousness. And then also king of Shalem, which is king of peace. Shalom comes from Shalom, which means peace, king of peace. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. Who is the only one that we can think of that fits this description? Without father, without mother, without beginning, without end? Our God. Our God is the only one without the beginning. Everything else is created, right? But made like the Son of God. Why? This is the puzzling part. Why did he not say, he is the Son of God? But made like the Son of God, he remains a priest perpetually. So he's the eternal priest. Eternal priest. Now observe how great this man was, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave a 10th of the choicest spoils. Who is the only one that deserves our 1/10, our tithe? If Abraham knew that this was a Gentile priest and gave 1/10, God should punish Abraham, right? But Abraham gave this 1/10 to Melchizedek. So who is higher? Sounds like Melchizedek. During the time, Abraham was the greatest man of faith. But this greatest man of faith is giving tithe to Melchizedek. Okay? And verse 5, and those indeed of the sons of Levi who receive the priest's office have command in the law to collect a 10th from the people, that is from their brethren, although these are descended from Abraham. This is written in a very complicated way. What this means is, okay, remember this is Abraham's time. When does Levi come around? Levi is not born yet. Levi is how many generations later after Abraham? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and one of Jacob's sons is Levi. Right? And then the descendants of Levi become the Levites, right? And those Levites are supposed to receive tithe from every tribe, and that becomes their earning, their living, right? And he is saying, Levi will receive, in the future, will receive all these tithes, but all that tithe that Levi's receive are under Abraham, because Levi is still in Abraham's seed. So Abraham becomes a representative for all the Levites in this point. And so Abraham giving the tithe to Melchizedek means it represents all the tithes that all the Levites will ever receive, offered up to Melchizedek. Do you understand? Okay. So verse 6, but the one whose genealogy is not traced from them collected a 10th from Abraham and blessed the one who had the promises. Who blessed whom? Melchizedek blessed Abraham. Verse 7, but without any dispute, the lesser is blessed by the greater. So, once again, who's greater than whom here, according to this passage? Melchizedek or Abraham? Looks like In this case, mortal man received tithes, but in that case, one received them, of whom it is witnessed that he lives on. Okay. So it's comparing mortal versus immortal. Okay. The one that lives on. And so to speak, through Abraham, even Levi, who received tithes, paid tithes. That's what I was trying to explain. This says it very simply. Okay? Through Abraham, even Levi, who received tithes, paid tithes, for he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Now, if perfection was through the Levitical priesthood, for on the basis of it the people received the law, what further need was there for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek, and not be designated according to the order of Aaron? Here it is. We read chapters 3, 5, and chapter 7 here for the sake of coming to understand this. He's comparing and differentiating the priesthood according to the order of Melchizedek and the priesthood according to the order of Aaron. And for when the priesthood is changed, of necessity there takes place a change of law also. For the one concerning whom these things are spoken belongs to another tribe, from which no one has officiated at the altar. For it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, a tribe with reference to which Moses spoke nothing concerning priests. So Judah has nothing to do with priesthood. And this is clear still if another priest arises according to the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become such not on the basis of a law of physical requirement, but according to the power and an indestructible life. For it is attested of him, you are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. For on the one hand, there is a setting aside of a former commandment because of its weakness and uselessness. For the law made nothing perfect, and on the other hand, there is a bringing in of a better hope through which we draw near to God. And as much as it was not without an oath, for they indeed became priests without an oath, but he with an oath through the one who said to him, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever. I will stop there. I'll read one more verse. So much the more also Jesus has become the guarantee of a better covenant. Amen? And so that's why the title of the book is The Eternal Perpetual Priest, the eternal high priest of the covenant of oath. And so this is speaking, the author of Hebrews is telling us, that God is telling us through the book of Hebrews, that the priesthood in the order of Melchizedek cannot continue on. It is Jesus who took over that priesthood in the order of Melchizedek, and it is only through Jesus, the new order, that he can give that new covenant of oath. And the new covenant, of course, is the covenant in his blood that he shed on the cross. Okay? And so, you don't need to understand everything we just read. We'll look at and study about this high priesthood of Jesus Christ in more detail. But why I went through all these reading is so. Do you remember reading something like this in the Bible before? I'm sure a lot of you do, but for some people this might be, wow, was this in the Bible? Jesus in the order of Jesus high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Okay, and so we are not going to get into too much into Melchizedek today. Next month when we meet again, if we have enough time, we will try a little bit. But let us think about first historically today. Until we finish today, we're going to think about the genealogy of the high priest. we have to start with the boring stuff so that later you get excited. We get over with the technical boring things first, okay? But hopefully by the grace of God, this won't be too boring, because I think I mentioned this all the time. Something that seems to be so exciting to me seems to be very boring to you. This genealogy really excites me, but and it's 77 generations of high priests, and I dare you, I challenge you, if you can memorize all 77 generations, I'll look for a way to reward you. But at our main church in Korea, the church where Reverend Abraham Park founded, Sunday school kids memorized the 77 generations. What a blessing for those little kids. Of course, they made it into a song with 7 verses. And it is a challenge. It's a challenge. But why are we studying about the high priest in the order of Aaron when Jesus is the high priest in the order of Melchizedek? What we read here, it says the order of Aaron, it's weak. It's become it says weak and useless. And so we have to, by studying the genealogy, we can understand why it's saying that. So today we'll study that, and next time, hopefully by the end of today, we will see why Jesus is the true high priest. Okay? So here it is. Genealogy of the high priest. Reverend Abraham Park, the author of the History of Temple series, went through not only the Bible, but through the historical books, Jewish history books, mainly the one that is written by Josephus, and found out all these generations continuously from one generation to another. What we can find in the Bible, especially in 1 Chronicles chapter 6, is the genealogy of the high priest from Aaron all the way to the 29th generation, Jaddua. In the Bible it's Yaddua, but anglicized pronunciation, we put all the J's there. So I'll just go with the English pronunciation. These high priests, 77 generations, are classified into different orders. Okay, for our understanding. So the first part from Aaron to Jaddua, 29th generation, it is classified by the temples where they serve. So the first temple was the tabernacle in the wilderness. Second was the Solomon's temple. Third was the temple of Zerubbabel, the second temple. And so these are the temples where they served, and these are the names. Second, it is classified by time periods. After the Babylonian captivity, they returned from Babylon and established and built the temple of Zerubbabel. But then, after that came the powers of the Greece, the Hellenistic power came and ruled over the region of Israel. And after that, after Alexander the Great died, Ptolemy and Seleucus, their powers came and ruled over. So while their powers are over the Israelites could not really reign over themselves. They did not have their own king. And so that affected the religious side too. So it is by default, because of the historical circumstances, the generations of the high priests are categorized according to the time periods. Ptolemaic and Seleucid reign, and then the Seleucids pushed out the Ptolemaic power all together, and so Seleucid reign. And then there was a revolution, independence revolution by the Maccabees, right? And the Hasmonean dynasty begins. And because of the battle and war, independence movement, there was an interlude in the high priesthood position. Everybody was out in the war, too busy to worship, I guess. So, interlude in the high priesthood from 159 BC to 152 BC. And after that, it's under the Hasmonean dynasty, the priests were taken, right? And after that, the third category, third classification is the high priest classified according to the appointers. Does this puzzle you a little bit? Any questions about this? Who's supposed to appoint the high priest of God? God. But here are the appointers. First, Herod the Great. Second, Herod Archelaus, which is Herod the Great's son by a Samaritan mother. And third, appointed by Quirinius, the governor of Syria. Appointed by Gratus, the governor of Judea. Appointed by Vitellius, the governor of Syria. And then Herod Agrippa, Herod of Chalcis, appointed by Herod Agrippa II. Okay, and ninth, chosen by the zealots in the end. Okay? So we'll go through the generations one by one. If you're taking pictures, I don't think I can put the entire thing on the phone. It's too small. Okay. So let us think about some of these people, these high priests. What did they do in history? First, in order, the high priest, the name high priest in Hebrew is Gadol. Gadol Kohen. Gadol means great or big. Okay? Gadol Kohen. And also, it is, in other places, said Kohen Rosh. You know what Rosh means in Hebrew? Rosh is head. Head priest. Okay? The chief priest. So, what are they supposed to do? What are their roles? Jewish understanding of mediation between God's people and God in the Old Testament times because of their sins. Or there were two kinds of people that mediated between God and the people. First is the prophets. The prophets are mouthpiece of God. So basically, prophets are the ones that will come to the people and tell them a message from God. Right? And priests are the people that will mediate the other way. When people have prayers or supplications, when people are seeking for forgiveness, when people want to give gifts or offering to God, it's through the priests that they come to God. Right? And it's the priests who are supposed to bring them Sabbath. Priests are the ones that, I think by this time you should know this term. I have emphasized this term several times. Abad. Abad is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. God put Adam in the garden to cultivate. That's the work that Adam was supposed to do, that he failed to do. And that word cultivate, abad, means to worship and to serve. It means to work also, but mainly it means to serve and to worship. And this word is repeatedly used in Exodus and Leviticus when it describes the role of the priests in the tabernacle. Okay. So they are to serve. They are servers that mediate between God and His people. And one of the main purpose of their role in their work in the temple or the tabernacle is atonement. The priests are to mediate in the work of atonement, making sure that people, and we read in Hebrews, and himself, because he's a human being too, himself and the people are atoned for. And they are the ones that will bring Sabbath. Meaning, they are the ones that will, on behalf of the people, worship God on the Sabbath. So, spiritually and redemptive, historically, it means that it's the high priest's job to bring that lost Sabbath. So even from the beginning, from their role and duty, it foreshadows the work of Jesus. The one that is to bring that eternal Sabbath to God's people. That's the role of the priests. So worship, Sabbath, and mediating and atonement. Worship, Sabbath, and atonement are basically the key words for high priest or priest duty. Okay? And their place of work was the temple, the tabernacle, also known as God's dwelling or God's house of God. And so if we look at it that way, even before God instituted this priesthood through the law, in the Garden of Eden, who was a priest? Adam was given the role of the priest. Okay? In the family unit of Abraham's family, who was the priest? Abraham gave offering to God, right? In Job, who was the priest? Right? And so these people were priests. And even David was given an ephod. Ephod is, this colorful vest-looking thing. This is the ephod. Okay? An ephod is kind of like a symbolic garment to say that this is a priest. And the one that wears a white ephod is just a priest. The one that wears this color is the high priest, especially with the breastplate. Okay. And how do you become a priest and a high priest? This is in Numbers chapter 3. You have to be born into the family. There's no other way. Who was the first high priest? Aaron, right? Aaron was the first high priest. Who's the next high priest? You don't have to tell me the name. You can tell me who. Aaron's son. Which son? Aaron's sons become priests. But Aaron's firstborn son becomes the high priest. Okay? Who's the next high priest? Aaron's firstborn son's firstborn is the next high priest. Okay? Only when the current high priest passes away, dies, then the next person next in line becomes the high priest. So in any generation, there is only one high priest. Okay? The other brothers' sons become priests. Right? And so Aaron is in the line of Levi, right? Levite tribe. All the other Levites become, quote unquote, the Levites. They help with, the Levites can come into the courtyard, but the priests can come into the holy place. Only the high priest, only one day of the year, the Day of Atonement, can come into the Holy of Holies. Okay? So you understand the concept. Okay? Not so hard. So, here we go. It begins with Aaron. Aaron had two other sons, Nadab and Abihu. They offered with the wrong, strange fire, and God struck them to death. The third one, by default, Eleazar, became the next high priest. And from then on, Eleazar's firstborn, Phinehas, and so on, becomes firstborn. Okay? But Aaron, as the high priest, was he the best high priest? From golden calf, yes. Another mistake. We can think about three major mistakes that Aaron made in the wilderness. The golden calf is the biggest one. Why? Because Aaron is the one that actually made it. And he led up the people in worshiping it. I don't know how Moses forgave him for that one. But then he went on, and later when Moses took a Cushite woman as wife, along with Miriam. Aaron slandered against Moses. And then later at the waters of Meribah at Kadesh, Aaron, together with Moses, sinned against God by striking the rock twice and speaking unholy things. Okay. But Phinehas, do you know what Phinehas did? He speared the adulterous couple, right? And all the things that the Bible speaks about Phinehas is good. And so it continues on, but then we'll talk about this man, Eliashib. This is after the Babylonian captivity, they returned. Okay? And Eliashib is the priest that helped in rebuilding the second temple. Okay? Joshua, Joachim, Eliashib. However, later in the construction of the temple, he builds a big house for himself. And he designates one nice room in the temple and gives it to Tobiah, who was a leader in standing against, in interfering with the reconstruction of the temple. What's the story behind it? What's the deal that went on? He gave a nice room from the temple to this man who was against it. And then comes Joiada. He gives his son-in-law to Sanballat's daughter, or a Gentile. Sanballat is a leader in Samaria. And it's the Samaritans who were against the reconstruction of the temple. He gets his priestly family mixed with the Samaritan through a mixed marriage, intermarriage. And then later comes Johanan, who is Joiada's son. Johanan is the high priest, but he gets into fight in the temple with Jesus. And this Jesus is not our Jesus. During that time, Jesus was one of the common names. Jesus was his brother's name. And Jesus was a friend of a Persian king's chief commander, Bagus. Chief commander says, okay, I'm going to take your brother Johanan out of the office and I'm going to make you the high priest. And Johanan found out about that and they somehow got in an argument in the temple of God and ended up fighting and ended up killing Jesus. Don't say that's a sign that Jesus will die. And Johanan killed Jesus, his brother, in the temple. So even from here, look at what these high priests are doing. They're already greedy for their position. And Gentile king's chief commander says, I will take the high priest that God appointed out of the office and I will put you in there. Does that even make sense? And later Jaddua Jaddua has a brother whose name is Manasseh, and he is married to a Gentile. But that brother is a priest also, right? Jaddua is a high priest and his brother is a priest. They're serving in the temple together, and then according to the historical records, the elders come to him saying, we cannot allow a priest that is married to a Samaritan to serve together with you in the temple. So either have him get divorced or kick him out of the priestlyhood. But that never happens, and it continues on. And then comes the Ptolemaic and Seleucid reigns. And these people already are influenced by their rules, the Greek rule. And during the time of the Seleucid reign, Have you heard of the name Antiochus? Antiochus the fourth? Antiochus Epiphanes. This is in Daniel's prophecy. This is supposed to be the big-mouthed horn, right? That talks big, and this is the foreshadowing of the Antichrist. Scholars say what he did was he said Epiphanes means epiphany of God in myself. So he called himself the manifestation of God. And he caused the Israelites to stop all their worship and set up the statue of Zeus in the temple of God, and forced the Israelites to offer up pig, on the altar for offering up to God. And pig, according to the Israelite law, is an unclean animal. They're not supposed to do that. They were forcing the Israelites to do that. And some priests went along with that. But because of that, Mattathias started a revolution, an independence movement. And that's called the Maccabean Revolution. And his son, Judas, takes over afterwards. And Judah Maccabees, and he's the one that begins the Hasmonean dynasty. Hasmonia is the scholars assume that was their surname or family name. So Hasmonean dynasty begins, and after Judas dies, Jonathan, his second brother, takes over. And Jonathan is very good in diplomatic relationship. That's why the Greeks gave him the name Apus, meaning diplomat. And Jonathan the diplomat. So he wanted to be already, they found independence, so they don't have to do anything with the Greek influence. But the high priest, Jonathan, takes over and he becomes the king, basically the ruler, and at the same time takes on the high priest position. That's the Greek way. According to the Israelite Jewish way, that is not supposed to be. God does not allow kingship and priesthood to overlap. But he was a good diplomat and he made good deals with, and he basically, I'm sorry for the language, kissed up to the Greeks. And he found favor from the Greeks, and the Greeks said, "You are the high priest for the nation." So he receives that name from the Greeks. Guess what? Is he qualified to be a king? Who's qualified? According to the Jewish history, according to the Bible, in order for him to be qualified to be a king, which lineage, which tribe is he supposed to be from? Judah. He's from a Levite tribe. Is he qualified to be a high priest? No, he is a Kohanite, but he's not. He can be a priest maybe or Levite, but he cannot be the high priest. But he appoints himself to be the ruler, and he gets appointed by the Greeks to be the high priest. And later, his third brother, Simon, the third Tassi, becomes the ruler, and also this one is favored by the Jewish people. He's good with another good diplomatic person, but then the Greeks waived the tributary tax during his time. I don't know how he did it. He was good. So they said, Jews, you guys don't have to pay tax. The Jewish people were so elated, so happy. They said, "You are our high priest." So he was named by his people the high priest. After Simon dies, he passes on his high priesthood, or he's not his high priesthood, his ruling power, his kingship, to his wife. And his high priesthood, he passes it down to his son, John Hyrcanus. Hyrcanus, by the way, is a Greek Hellenicized name now already. But Hyrcanus, John Hyrcanus, is not happy with what he received. He doesn't like the high priesthood only. He wants to be king. So what does he do? He starves his mother to death. He starves his mother to death, and he becomes the ruler and the high priest. That's the kind of high priest that they had. Okay? And then comes mysterious way John Hyrcanus dies. Who knows? But he killed all his brothers. Any potential person that can become a high priest or ruler, he killed all of them. But then somehow there was another one. Actually, probably his son, this one, Aristobulus. He becomes the high priest after a questionable death of his father. Probably learned from his own father, right? Okay. Aristobulus becomes the ruler and high priest, of course, at the same time. And he is ambitious. He wants to enlarge and go forth and regain the territory, expanded territory. And during his time, the territory was the biggest, except the time of Solomon. Okay? The times of Solomon was the greatest. But almost to that extent, Aristobulus started to invade, started to conquer different kinds of lands. And one of the lands that he conquered was right beneath, to the south of Canaan, of Palestine, called Idumea. It was a Gentile, not so Gentile because long time ago they were cousins. Idumeans are descendants of Edomites, who are the descendants of Esau. So, children of great uncle, right? Jacob and Esau set to split, but then Idumea, and then they forced circumcise the Idumeans, saying, "You are a Jew now. You have to worship our God." And so forced converted the Idumeans to Judaism. Alexander Janneus, and then Hyrcanus II, and these guys come around. Hyrcanus II conquers the north, and what we know as where did Jesus live? Lazarus, and above that, the Caesarea, that region, right? Galilee. Okay. The Galileans were conquered, and the Idumeans were forced to conversion, right? Converting to Judaism. So they resisted a bit. But Galileans were easier. So that's why during the time of Jesus, the Galileans were good believers, right? They were converted believers. Okay? And Aristobulus II came around, and he had a PA, personal assistant. Aristobulus, I guess, was not so quick and smart, but his personal assistant from Idumea was very smart. And his name was Antipater. Antipater. And he had 2 sons, and one of his sons' name was Herod. So this is, can you imagine all these stories seem quite exciting or interesting, but none of these people's lives were had any kind of holiness or any reverence to God. They're focused and interested in power, money, and all that. Right? Conquering. And think about the spiritual state of the people of God during that time when they are led and represented by priests that are like this. And we go on to the next. Should we take a break before we go on? Yeah. So let us take we are going to have an offering time first before we take a break. And we'll take a 10-minute break. 10-minute break. And we'll come back and resume. We'll continue with the third classification, or the third final classification of the high priest. And here, what do you think about the previous high priests so far? You like them? You like their stories? And it becomes even better. The third classification, the high priest classified according to appointers. And from there, something's wrong already. Appointer, we learned that supposed to be descendants of Aaron. And already we saw that during the time of the Hasmonean era, it's very ironic because they found independence so that they can worship the God Most High, of the God of their forefathers, and give the proper sacrifice on the altar. But the genealogy of the high priest becomes messed up, and their worship becomes blaspheme. What is the difference? What's the purpose of finding independence? What's the difference between the Ptolemaic and Seleucid reign versus the Judean independence, Hasmonean era? In the eyes of God, maybe the people were more desperate and more serious in trying and more hungry to worship God properly when they were actually under persecution. When they were under peace and their own rule, they were more hungry for secular power. And makes us think about ourselves too. What is the requirement for us to worship God properly? We oftentimes seek for an ideal condition to worship God properly. I have to have this, I have to have this. Unless I do this, I cannot really serve God. But then, and one example is, I don't know if you have experienced it, but when I used to, before I became a pastor, when I used to live far away from church, I used to wake up very early, and when I arrive at church, I'm there before other people. And then God blessed us so we can move closer to church. And oftentimes we were late to church. Very ironic how our minds work. Right? So maybe something like this. Maybe God knows that He has to give us some kind of struggle, some kind of affliction in order for us to be more zealous and hungry and more seeking. When we are in comfortable, blessed environment, we seek for something else, it seems like. But the key is, I'm not trying to tell you that God needs to punish you in order for you to become more holy. The key is, I believe God is looking for people who can still worship Him, and still be hungry, still be seeking Him, even when He blesses them so much. Then God will bless them even more, I believe.
Amen.
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 So let us meet those people. And so here, Herod becomes the king. Remember, Herod was from Idumea, conquered by the Jews. But he climbs up that ladder. He is he's a genius. Has anybody been to the Holy Land Israel tour? Do you remember seeing the constructions and the roads, the temples that Herod built? Is it Massa? On top of the hill, Masada. And then the actual temple, he was a construction genius. He was a genius in many different ways, and I think that's why he went crazy. But he was diplomatically, he knew which people to connect with and how to jump from this line to that line to make his way up. And he became a king over the people that conquered his own people. And he appointed, when he became king, we know that he and we all know that he wasn't a proper, appropriate, qualified Jewish king. He was a puppet king, and also he was not a Jew. He was an Edomian. And so every moment he was very paranoid about his position. He knew and he thought he had to worry about the Caesar, the Roman Caesar that put him there. He had to worry about the people of Judea. And so when he first becomes king, he appoints. Now these Gentile kings or governors are appointing who should be. And what do you think is the qualification to be appointed as the high priest? Because for the Jews, sometimes the high priest has more authority than the king, especially in this time. Because they're reigned over by Gentile nations. They don't want to follow the political leader. They want to follow their religious leader. So high priest has a big authority and big say on the people. And so the king, if you are a smart king, you have to appoint the person that will tell the people to do what you want them to do. So the high priest needs to be your friend, right? So Herod calls his friend named Ananel. His friend happens to be a Jew living in the Babylonian area, Babylon. After the Babylonian captivity, not everybody returned, right? Some people stayed there. There was a big Jewish community in the Babylon area. And so he calls his friend Ananel, hey, I became a king, you want a position? But you gotta work with me. So he brings Ananel from Babylon, and at the same time he's thinking, I'll buy some favor from the Babylonian Jewish people. Okay? So he brings Ananel. But then Herod was married to a Jewish wife, Mariamne the first. It was a given name, Mariamne. Mariamne's mother, Mariamne was Hyrcanus, Aristobulus, Hyrcanus the second, this family, from a Hasmonean family. And so Mariamne's mother was, I believe, Aristobulus, no, Hyrcanus, the second's wife. And she said, it is a shame that the high priest cannot be from the Hasmonean family. So she wants to influence her son-in-law, who is Herod. But Herod is Herod, you cannot influence him. And she is from the Hasmonean family, so he is kind of afraid. He's trying to distance this family. He doesn't want this family to continue on with the high priest position. He wants his friend Ananel there. So, what do moms do? Mom calls her friend. In Egypt, Cleopatra the seventh is Mariamne's mother's friend. And during that time, Ptolemies were ruling Egypt. Remember Ptolemaic Rome? So they're the more powerful than Herod. And so from there, she tells Cleopatra to tell Herod, influence Herod, and so Herod doesn't have a choice. Okay, Aristobulus III, which is his wife's brother. Young little one, okay? He becomes high priest at the age of 17 or something like that. And so they are anointing the high priest, and all of Judea, these people were celebrating. Finally, the Hasmonean family came back to the high priest position. Herod is looking out the window, not so happy. And one day, this young boy, high priest, 17-year-old high priest, does the high priestly duty. Everybody loves it. And one day on his off day, he goes for swimming. Aristobulus III goes for swimming. Drowned. Mysteriously. Okay? And we know it's somebody, Herod told somebody to do that. And guess who's right back? Ananias right back to the position. So Aristobulus was in the high priest office less than 1 year, and Ananias comes back. Okay. And then after Ananias' time, it's not really specified whether he died or just fired. Jesus of Phoebe. The name Phoebe is found in some of the inscriptions found in Egypt. So they're estimating or educated guessing that just like Herod appointed one from Babylon, now Herod was to buy favor from the Jews in Egypt. So he appoints from somebody from Egypt. Of course, a Jewish guy named Jesus of Phoebe. After that, Herod falls in love with this beautiful woman, and later her name is Miriam II. Of course, another given name. He falls in love with this girl, and so in order to get her, he appoints her father, who happened to be a priest, as a high priest, and his name is Simon. And he serves as a high priest for 19 long years. In comparison to other high priests who are 4 years, 5 years, supposed to be lifelong, right? But then later he finds out, or he suspects that his second wife, Miriam II, is participating in this plot against him to assassinate him. With his first wife and his brother-in-law, he's thinking, those guys are trying to kill me. So he lets Miriam go and fires Simon. Matthias is another high priest, and then Joasar, where you cannot waste too much time. And later it comes around where appointing becomes a big business. High priest appointing is about money now. Who becomes the high priest? The highest bidder. Yeah. And so it's the fight of the two richest families during that time among the Jews. And one family is Annas' family, the other I cannot remember the name. And so Annas becomes the high priest. And then next term, he loses the bid. The other rich family outbids him. So he loses for a period. And so he comes back, he calls all his friends and he borrows money, puts the money together, and he comes back and his family just rules the high priestly position. Look at this. After Annas, Eliezer, his son-in-law Caiaphas, his son Jonathan, his son Theophilus, son Matthias, his son Annas II. Are you in awe? And these are the names that we are familiar with. So in conclusion, I'm not going to go through all the names. In conclusion, let us turn to Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." They were looking for the King of the Jews. What was Herod's reaction to this? He was almost psychotic about this. He was very troubled because I need to be the only king. Somebody here is trying to oust me, put me out of the office. He knew deep inside he wasn't the right king. And then let's turn to John chapter 18, verses 12 and 13. John chapter 18. So the Roman cohort and the commander and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him and led him to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Remember, during the time of Jesus, we hear about the chief priest or high priest Annas, and then the high priest Caiaphas. How is that happening? There are two high priests? Can it be? It's supposed to be only one, right? What's happening? We saw earlier in this chart, okay, Annas is still alive. And Caiaphas, it was during the time when Caiaphas, his son-in-law, was the high priest. And when Annas is still alive, Caiaphas, although he's entitled the current high priest, who actually rules? The father-in-law actually has more power, right? So they take him to Annas first, and then to Caiaphas. And then, now let us turn to John chapter 19, verses 14 through 19. The reason why, one of the main reasons why Jesus was accused is because people called him king. Another reason was that he said he's the Son of God, or he's Father and I are one. He said something about rebuilding the temple. He worked on the Sabbath. Who's the only one that can work during the Sabbath, on the Sabbath? The priest, the high priest. Right? And so he worked on the Sabbath. So what he was doing was the priestly work. And even the last prayer, John chapter 17, was a priestly prayer that Jesus did. Verse 14, now it was the day of preparation for the Passover. It was about the 6th hour, and he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." This is Pilate saying to the Jews. Okay? So they cried out, away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, do you see that? Chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." It's the chief priest saying. So he then handed him over to them to be crucified. Jesus, when Jesus came, the king was fake. Herod wasn't the true king. The king was fake. When Jesus came, the high priest was fake. And they're the ones that accused Jesus for claiming to be king. They're the ones that accused Jesus for claiming to be their priest or the Son of God that came to mediate. They did not have any qualification to be condemners of Jesus. They should have known They are the fake ones. Maybe that's why they were afraid. They wanted to cover it up. Hebrews chapter 5 verses 7 through 10 we read, and Hebrews chapter 6 verses 18 through 20. Let us read Hebrews chapter 6, 18 through 20. So that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have taken refuge would have strong encouragement to take hold of the hope set before us. This hope we have is an anchor of the soul, a hope both sure and steadfast, one which enters within the veil, where Jesus has entered as a forerunner for us, having become a high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. When Jesus died on the cross, the veil ripped open. Jesus went into the Holy of Holies once and for all. For that one-time atonement that is valid even until today. That's why he was a different high priest. During that time, they needed a high priest, but high priest wasn't there. The position was taken up by all the other people. It was defiled by sinfulness and corruption, but there was no high priest. That's why God said there needs another high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Now, when we in this language, in the order of Melchizedek, the high priest in the order of Aaron are supposed to be what? What kind of people? The people that are born in the line of Aaron, right? That the people who follow Aaron in the order of Aaron. Here, it's what's a little bit puzzling is Jesus, the high priest, in the order of Melchizedek. So who precedes whom here in this language? So it makes our question about Melchizedek a little bit bigger. So is he somebody who precedes Jesus? How can anybody precede Jesus? Right? Because Jesus was there in the beginning. He is the God of creation. Right? So we will ponder and think more about this Melchizedek next time. And we will think more about this high priest. And we're going to, next time, can I ask which date is it? In September 30th, right? 27th, okay. 27th of September will be the last day for this year, for this 2 o'clock Bible House. The last 7 p.m., is it 7:30 p.m. Bible House will be on the 6th of September. So 6th of September and then 27th of September. 27th of September, we're going to think about the garments. How every piece of garment foreshadows the role and the duties of Jesus Christ. And then we're going to talk about what the high priest is supposed to do on the Day of Atonement in relation to the Day of Crucifixion. Because that was the final and the only eternal atonement that Jesus went through. So Jesus, our high priest, and he needs to be the high priest in order to give that atonement sacrifice for us. And so I pray that in all of your life, remember, Jesus is there as your high priest. Not these guys. Not these guys. Jesus is, and so therefore, and Jesus, how he atoned for other people. Atonement is when, in the Old Testament, when I sin, I bring on a lamb. Right? But with Jesus, we don't bring anything. We just bring ourselves and our heart to Jesus. Jesus provides the sacrifice. Jesus becomes the sacrifice. And he says, no matter what we are doing, if our heart is broken, if we sincerely come and repent before him, he will say, this one doesn't need anything. You don't need to give anything. I have already done it. I already covered for you. I already took care of your sins. And I stand for you. I represent you. That's what the true high priest is supposed to do. And so God, our Father, if we are to separate the Father and Son here in this world, the Son is the priest. Father is God, right? Even if He wants to judge us, He cannot. According to His own rules, He cannot condemn us because Jesus stands right there, mediating between us and God. So please believe, as we live our lives, there's Jesus standing for you as the high priest. Amen? Let us pray and finish this session. I'd like for us to spend maybe a couple minutes and lift up our prayers to God for Singapore, our nation. Let us pray for our leaders, our government leaders, and let us pray for next year's upcoming I don't want to call it crusade. What do we call it? We are gathering. It will be a crusade. October 7th. Is it October 7th?
This year our prayer 50,000.
Yeah. This year we have a 50,000 prayer gathering, and then next year will be the big one. So let us pray for this year's gathering and next year's gathering, along with our prayers for all the churches in Singapore. And let us pray that God's word will come alive and our churches will arise and really represent, become not like the priests of those times, but the true priests. May every church become a true priest of God that will mediate and represent this nation and the people. Let us pray for that.